I replied, and he, suddenly remembering, exclaimed, "That night of softly falling rain I do not forget, even for a moment. I yearn for it." As chance did not permit me many words, I said, "What intensity of memory clings to your heart? That gentle shower fell on the leaves. Only for a moment our hearts touched." Let's add some context. Welcome or welcome back to her Murmuring library, a place for all kinds of women's stories. And today, we're continuing Lady Sarashina's, as she is now waiting on the princess, dodging any fame or increased responsibilities, and falling in love with a man or poetry. You be the judge. Sarashina Diary, Part 4. Those who were familiar with the court life seemed to be at home there, but I, who was not very young, yet did not wish to be counted among the elderly, was rather neglected and made to usher guests. However, I did not expect too much of court life, and had no envy for those who were more graceful than I. This, on the contrary, set me at ease, and I from time to time presented myself before the princess, and talked only with congenial friends about lovely things. Even on smile-presenting, interesting occasions, I shrank from intruding and becoming too popular, and did not go far into most things. Sleeping one night before the princess, I was awakened by cries and fluttering noises from the waterfowl in the pond. Like us, the water-jowl pass all the night in floating sleep. They seem to be weary with shaking away the frost from their feathers. My companions passed their leisure time in talking over romances with the door open which separated our rooms, and they often called back one who had gone to the princess's apartment. She sent word once, "I'll go if I must," meaning intending to give herself the pleasure of coming back. The long leaves of the reed are easily bent, so I will not forcibly persuade it, but leave it to the wind. In this way, composing poems, we passed the hours talking idly. Afterwards, this lady separated from the court and left us. She remembered that night and sent me word. That moonless, flowerless winter night. It penetrates my thought and makes me dwell on it. I wonder why. It touched my heart, for I was also thinking of that night. In my dreams the tears of that cold night are still frozen, but these I weep away secretly. Wow, okay. The princess still called my stepmother by the name of Kazusa, governor's lady. Father was displeased that that name was still used after she had become another man's wife, and he made me write to her about it. The name of Asakura in a far-off country. The court now hears it in a divine dance song. My name also is still somewhere heard, but not honorably. On a very bright night after the full moon, I attended the princess to the Imperial palace. I remembered that the heaven-illuminating goddess was enthroned within, and wanted to take an opportunity to kneel before the altar. One moonbright night, in 1042 AD, I went in to the shrine privately, for I know Lady Hakase, who was taking care of this shrine. The perpetual lights before the altar burned dimly. She, the Lady Hakase, grew wondrously old and holy. She seems not like a mortal, but like a divine incarnation, yet she spoke very gracefully. The moon was very bright on the following night, and the princess's ladies passed the time in talking and moon-gazing, opening the doors, outer shutters, of the Fujitsubo. The footsteps of the royal consort of Umetsubo going up to the king's apartment were so exquisitely graceful as to excite envy. Had the late queen been living, She could not walk so grandly, someone said. I composed a poem. She is like the moon, who, opening the gate of heaven, goes up over the clouds. We, being in the same heavenly palace, pass the night in remembering the footfalls of the past. The ladies who are charged with the duty of introducing the court nobles seem to have been fixed upon, and nobody notices whether simple-hearted country women like me exist or not. On a very dark night in the beginning of the god's absent month, when sweet-voiced reciters were to read sutras throughout the night, another lady and I went out towards the entrance door of the audience room to listen to it, and after talking, fell asleep, listening, leaning, when I noticed a gentleman who had come to be received in audience by the princess. It is awkward to run away to our apartment to escape him. We will remain here. Let it be as it will. So said my companion, and I sat beside her listening. He spoke gently and quietly. There was nothing about him to be regretted. Who is the other lady? He asked of my friend. He said nothing rude or amorous like other men, but talked delicately of the sad, sweet things of the world, and many a phrase of his with a strange power enticed me into conversation. He wondered that there should have been in the court one who was a stranger to him, and did not seem inclined to go away soon. There was no starlight, and a gentle shower fell in the darkness. How lovely was its sound on the leaves! The more deeply beautiful is the night, he said, the full moon would be too dazzling. Discoursing about the beauties of spring and autumn, he continued, although every hour has its charm, pretty is the spring haze. Then the sky being tranquil and overcast, the face of the moon is not too bright. It seems to be floating on a distant river. At such a time, the calm spring melody of the lute is exquisite. In autumn, on the other hand, the moon is very bright. Though there are mists trailing over the horizon, we can see things as clearly as if they were at hand. The sound of wind, the voices of insects, all sweet things seem to melt together. When at such a time we listen to the autumnal music of the koto, we forget the spring. We think that is best. But the winter sky, frozen all over, magnificently cold, the snow covering the earth, and its light mingling with the moonshine. Then the notes of the hichiriki vibrate on the air, and we forget spring and autumn. And he asked us, which captivates your fancy, or which stays your mind? My companion answered in favor of autumn, and I, not being willing to imitate her, said, pale green night and flowers, all melting into one, in the soft haze, everywhere the moon, glimmering in the spring night. So I replied, and he, after repeating my poem to himself over and over, said, then you give up autumn? After this, as long as I live, such a spring night shall be for me a memento of your personality. The person who favored autumn said, others seem to give their hearts to spring, and I shall be alone gazing at the autumn moon. He was deeply interested, and being uncertain in thought, said, even the poets of the Tang Empire could not decide which to praise most, spring or autumn. Your decisions make me think that there must be some personal reasons when our inclination is touched or charmed. Our souls are imbued with the colors of the sky, moon, or flowers of that moment. I desire much to know how you came to the charms of spring and autumn. The moon of a winter night is given as an instance of dreariness, and as it is very cold, I had never seen it intentionally. When I went down to Ise to be present as the messenger of the king at the ceremony of installing the Virgin in charge of the shrine, I wanted to come back in the early dawn, so went to take leave of the princess, whose installation had just taken place, in a moon-bright night after many days' snow, half shrinking to think of my journey. Her residence was an otherworldly place, awful even to the imagination, but she called me into an adequate apartment. There were persons in that room who had come down in the reign of the Emperor Enyu. Their aspect was very holy, ancient, and mystical. They told of the things of long ago with tears. They brought out a well-tuned four-stringed lute. The music did not seem to be anything happening in this world. I regretted that day should even dawn, and was touched so deeply that I had almost forgotten about returning to the capital. Ever since then, the snowy nights of winter recall that scene, and I, without fail, gaze at the moon even though hugging the fire. You will surely understand me, and hereafter, every dark night with gentle rain will touch my heart. I feel this has not been inferior to the snowy night at the palace of the Ise Virgin. With these words he departed, and I thought he could not have known who I was. In the 8th month of the next year, 1043, we went again to the Imperial Palace, and there was in the court an entertainment throughout the night. I did not know that he was present at it, and I passed that night in my own room. When I looked out, in the early morning, opening the sliding doors on the corridor, I saw the morning moon very faint and beautiful. I heard footsteps, and people approached, some reciting sutras. One of them came to the entrance and addressed me. I replied, and he, suddenly remembering, exclaimed, "That night of softly falling rain I do not forget, even for a moment. I yearn for it." As chance did not permit me many words, I said, "What intensity of memory clings to your heart? That gentle shower fell on the leaves. Only for a moment our hearts touched." I had scarcely said so when people came up, and I stole back without his answer. That evening, after I had gone to my room, my companion came in to tell me that he had replied to my poem. If there be such a tranquil night as that of the rain, I would like in some way to make you listen to my lute, playing all the songs I can remember. I wanted to hear it, and waited for the fit occasion, but there was none, ever. In the next year, one tranquil evening, I heard that he had come into the princess's palace, so I crept out of my chamber with my companion, but there were many people waiting within and without the palace, and I turned back. He must have been of the same mind with me. He had come because it was so still a night, and he returned because it was noisy. I yearn for a tranquil moment, to be out upon the sea of harmony, in that enchanted boat. O boatman, do you know my heart? So I composed that poem, and there is nothing more to tell. His personality was very excellent, and he was not an ordinary man. But time passed, and neither called to the other. In winter, though the snow had not come yet, the starlit sky was clear and cold. One whole night I talked with those who were in the palace. Here there's a translator's note that says, "Something seems to have occurred, which seems to be implied to be her marriage," but she does not overtly say it. Instead, she goes on to say, "Like a good-for-nothing woman, I retired from the court life." On the 25th of the end month, which the translators have as Christmas Day, which seems like a bizarre translator's note since there was no Christmas in Heian era Japan, as they were not Christian. On the 25th day of the end month, December 1043, I was summoned by the princess to the religious service of reciting Buddha's names. I went for that night only. About 40 ladies were there, all dressed in deep red dresses, and also in deep red outer robe. I sat behind the person who led me in, the most shadow-like person among them, and I retired before dawn. On my way home, it snowed in fluttering flakes, and the frozen, ghostly moon was reflected in my dull red sleeves of glossy silk. Even that reflection seemed to be wet and sad. I thought all the way. The year comes to a close, and the night also, and the moon reflected in my sleeve. All passes. When one is in court, one may become familiar with those who serve there, and know worldly things better. And if one is thought amiable, one is received as a lady, and favors may be bestowed. Such had been my thought. But father was now disappointed in me, and kept me at home. But how could I expect that my fortunes should become dazzling in a moment? It was my father's idle fancy, yet he felt that it had betrayed him. Though 1,000 times how many, I gathered parsley in the fields, yet my wishes were by no means fulfilled. This is a reference to an old fable about parsley. A country person ate parsley and thought it was very fine, so he went to the capital to present it to the king. But the king wasn't so impressed, so the phrase to gather parsley means to endeavor to win others' favor by offering something we love, but others may not. I grumbled so far, and no further. I regretted deeply the idle fancies of old days, and as my parents would not accompany me to temples on pilgrimages, I could hardly suppress my impatience. I wished to strengthen my spirit to bring up my child who is still in the germ. Moreover, I wished to do my best to pile up virtuous deeds for the life to come. So, encouraging my heart, I went to the Ishiyama temple after the 20th day of the frost month in 1045. It snowed and the route was lovely. On coming in sight of the barrier at Osaka Pass, I was reminded that it was also in winter when I passed it on my way up to Kyoto. Then also it was a windy, tempestuous day. The sound of the autumn wind at the barrier of Osaka, it differs not from that heard long ago. The temple at Seki, magnificent though it was, made me think of the old roughly hewn Buddha. The beach at Uchide was not changed in the passing of months and years, but my own heart feels change. Towards evening I arrived at the temple, and after a bath went up to the main shrine. The mountain wind was dreadful. I took it for a good omen that, falling asleep in the temple, I heard a voice saying, "From the inner shrine perfume has been bestowed. Tell it at once." At the words I awoke and passed the night in prayer. The next day the wind raged and it snowed heavily. I comforted my lonely heart with the friend of the princess who came with me. We left after 3 days. On the 25th of the 10th month of the next year, 1046, the capital was in great excitement over the purification ceremonies before the Great Ceremony. The Great Ceremony referenced here was Gore Izai from 1046 to 1068. For my part, I wanted to set out that same day for Hase Temple for my own religious purification. They stopped me, saying it was a sight to be seen only once in one reign, that even the country people had come to see the procession, and it was madness to leave the city that very day. "Your deeds will be spread abroad, and people will gossip about you," said my brother angrily. "No, no, let the person have her own will." And according to my wish, he, her husband, let me start. His kindness touched me, but on the other hand, I pitied those who accompanied me, her retinue, who, with longing hearts, wanted to see the ceremony. But what have we to do with such shows? Buddha will be pleased with those who come at a time like this. I wanted without fail to receive the divine favor, and started before dawn. When I was crossing the great bridge of Nijo, with pine torches flaming before me, and with my attendants in pure white robes, All the men on horseback, in carriage, or on foot who encountered me on their way to the stands prepared for sightseers said, in surprise, "What is that?" And some even laughed or scolded me. As I was passing before the gate of Yoshinori, the commander of the bodyguard and his men were standing before the wide-open portals. They said, laughing, "Here goes a company to the temple. There are many days and months in the world to do that in." But there was one standing by who said, "What is it to fatten the eyes for a moment? They are firmly determined. They will surely receive Buddha's favor. We ought also to make up our minds for the good without sightseeing." Thus one man spoke seriously. I had wanted to leave the city before broad daylight, and had started in the middle of the night, but had to wait for belated persons till the very thick fog became thinner. People flowed in from the country like a river. Nobody could turn aside to make room for anybody else, and even the ill-behaved and vulgar children who passed beside my carriage with some difficulty had words of wonder and contempt for us. I felt sorry that I had started that day, yet praying to Buddha with all my heart, I arrived at the Ferry of Uji. Even there the people were coming up to the city in throngs, and the ferryman, seeing these numberless people, was filled with his own importance and grew proud. He, tucking up his sleeves against his face and leaning on his pole, would not bring the boat at once. He looked around, whistling, and assumed an indifferent air. We could not cross the river for a long time, so I looked around the place, which I had felt a curiosity to see ever since reading Genji Monogatari, which tells that the daughter of the princess of Uji lived here. I thought it a charming spot. At last we managed to get across the river and went to see the Uji mansion. I was at once reminded that the Lady Ukefune of the romance had been living here. As we had started before daybreak, my people were tired out and rested at Hiroichi to take food. The guard said, "Is that the famous mountain Kurikoma? It is towards evening. Be ready with your armor to protect from robbers or evil spirits." I listened to these words with a shudder, but we passed that mountain without adventure, and the sun was on its summit when we arrived at the lake of Nieno. They went in several directions to seek a lodging, and returned saying there was no proper place, only an obscure hut. But as there were no other place, we took that. In the house there were only 2 men, for the rest had all gone to the capital. Those 2 men did not sleep that night at all, but kept watch around the house. My maids, who were in the recess, maybe an outer part of the hut used as a kitchen, asked, "Why do you walk about so?" And the men answered, "Why? We have rented our house to perfect strangers. What should we do if our kettles were stolen? Of course we cannot sleep." I felt both dread and laughter to hear them. And that's where she leaves us today. Thank you so much for listening. If you're enjoying Sarashina's story, come join the library and subscribe to get notified for the upcoming final part of her diary. And don't forget, be well, but not well behaved. And don't forget to put your names on things. Till next time.